Hey guys, Luton here, and something new this week. So, I have voiced this idea before on my live streams, and this week I thought I'd actually put it into practice. So this was going to be a new series called Below the Line, and Below the Line is comments made below the line, so down below the YouTube video. Now you guys know I always try really hard to read everybody's comments and comment back to you myself where appropriate, or if I think somebody's made a really good point about the video or about the topic at hand in general. And I thought it'd be a really good idea that instead of doing kind of like a QA, which a lot of people do, I thought this would be a different thing that I could do. I could choose every week 3 comments from whatever videos I have made that I think are particularly noteworthy and worthwhile, and then I can share those, because very often people will watch a video but they don't read all the comments and they might miss something, but I tend to see all of the comments. So this way I can select something, and it's also a good way of me kind of giving you guys a little shout out and saying, you know, thanks very much for, you know, being involved in my content, and I've taken note of the fact that you made a really good point. So first of all, we started off with KevTCC, and he was commenting on the video I made talking about weapons sound and the differences between many different titles like Battlefield, Arma, and Squad. And what he said was, based on my real world experience with many of the weapons, Squad is the most accurate sounding for outgoing fire based on my experience of just a couple of the weapons. It also is the most accurate for incoming fire. What truly makes Squad stand out is how the weapon sounds and damage sounds accurately reflect around your environment. Towns, buildings reflect sound differently than hills and trees do. The first time you're on the other side of a hill from a full-on battle in Squad, you'll truly feel about how it is to crest that hill. I remember the days back when Creative launched their realistic environmental sound. It was exciting back then. However, I've never heard a game portray that sound of energy and force just on the other side of a hill so accurately. Also, the distance-based delay for sounds is engaging in Squad. Having a sniper's bullet snap over your head and then hearing the sound of the weapon firing lets you know you're in a kind of danger that you can't do much about. I don't think a game has to be realistic weapon sounding in order to be enjoyable or for the sounds to impose any emotion on you as you play. The realism works in Squad because it sits you down in the battlefield and says, this is real, do not stick your head up. That doesn't make sense for games like Battlefield or COD. That's a good point. Second on my list would be JSRS, incoming fire. I wasn't a fan of the outgoing sounds, but the incoming seemed very good for the purpose. Keeping in mind that I'm basing my assessment on the purpose of causing an emotion while playing and not necessarily for duplicating the real world. Bad Company 2 is third on my list. Again, with that incoming fire, the whizzing bullets, not as realistic, but they give you a good sense of danger and energy. It makes you live in the moment while playing. I remember what it was like to be trying to get for cover while things were whizzing past. It would almost be breathless as I got behind cover, if not in actuality in my role-playing mind. I never found the sounds of weapons made me feel anything in the other Battlefield titles or Arma. Objectively, Squad stands so far ahead of the rest that it's hard to compare them properly. Not only does the sound in Squad produce the right emotions, it also is very realistic. I don't feel embarrassed when I almost crap my pants in Squad, but if I've ever felt that way in Battlefield, I'd probably have to turn the computer off and go and chop down a tree or something. So I thought this was a great comment, and he goes through and makes really specific points about every element there. He's obviously chosen the titles which he feels work the best within the context of what it was that we were talking about there. But I just like the detail, and I think he really hits the mark in what he's saying about the energy and the force of the sound there, because that was a really key point about what I was talking about in that video, was talking about that physicality of the sound and how it immerses you into the game. So from KevTCC, thanks so much for your comment. Okay, the next 2 comments come from the same video, and this was the hype and pre-order video this week that I made, and that was talking about hype and pre-ordering in the game and how it can negatively affect you, how it can be bad for the industry, how it can be bad for everybody. So we've got Rob Shooter here, and I know that he's an ongoing long-term follower of mine, so good to have one of his comments on here. He says, I remember Total Biscuit making a really good video about pre-ordering about 2 years ago. He also stated that during DICE 2013, one of the readings given concluded that people that pre-order a game are more likely to buy the game than people who wouldn't. They have already set that first step towards their dedication for the product. Also, many people hate to admit that they make bad purchases. This is 100% true, which can create a shill with people saying the product is great while they might not have actually bought it if they didn't pre-order the game. From my personal experience, I pre-ordered Modern Warfare 3 for Xbox 360 and I pre-ordered Battlefield 4 for my PC. It happened to me as well. For the first few months I was in denial about the quality of the product I'd bought. I also enticed some of my friends into buying it. But after 4 to 6 months, it really hit me. I made 2 bad purchases that I could and should have been able to avoid. I haven't pre-ordered since, and I don't feel like I ever need to, even though I have enough disposable income. That doesn't mean that I need to support bad consumer practices that in the best case only give me a skin. It's not worth the risk. Consumers have enough resources available to inform themselves about a product. Not being the first one to play is not important. You can always buy the game after launch, and then you can just enjoy it at your own pace. In my friends group, there is only one friend who frequently pre-orders. He's really not the smartest of the group in general. I love that. As well, that he doesn't work and gets enough money from his parents, which probably makes him less see the value of money, since he doesn't really know what it is to work for money. I think that's a fair point, but at the same time, we're all young once, right? But more to the point, he is someone who can't admit that he made a wrong purchase, even though it's general fact that particular game he purchased was broken on release or is just an average game. So he's quite stubborn, I suppose. He's more of an emotional thinker than a rational one, getting caught by the hype and fan behaviour. And I think this is kind of the crux of what I was talking about, I could imagine a lot of gamers, casual ones specifically, being closer to an emotional thinker than a rational one, either unaware of the damage they are doing. And he said, sorry for the long comment, but better than a first comment. That's completely accurate. But yeah, so I think he really hits the point there about what I was saying. And I think it's very true, and I think that very much supports the kind of trend. And it's kind of good to hear these sort of validations and corroborations about what it is that I'm saying. I think it is true that people kind of just go with their sort of instinct, and sometimes that instinct is highly directed by marketing and other things. They're kind of like, I don't know what to get. And then you see the kind of gloss, and the gloss is what happens. And that's advertising. That's the whole point. Instead of making an informed choice, you're making an emotional choice based off of seeing and feeling. But sometimes advertising works like that, and there's not much you can do about it. But I think what we should say is, it's not like you should never make a purchase on your gut instinct, but you should definitely try to be as informed as possible. And I think that's really the whole point that I was trying to make. Okay, and then last we got Proxel, and Proxel, again, another long-time subscriber of mine, again talking about hype and pre-ordering. So Proxel says, yeah, absolutely, I can't say I haven't been caught up in the hype when I was younger and more foolish, but for the last 3 years I haven't pre-ordered anything. I think the main thing we are seeing is that publishers, developers are trying to offset as much risk as possible. In doing so, they're transferring that to the consumers, and that is of course a problem. That is absolutely true. People are accepting the risk without much thought of the consequence on themselves or on a wider scale. So awareness seems to be the key thing which is lacking. Awareness of their own actions and the wider consequences of those actions. Sadly, it seems to be another circumstance that won't change without a majority deciding that it should or can, and not knowing how to go about it. In this case, the consumer seems to be multiple individuals and the publisher a single entity reaping the rewards of apathy and hype. Again, I got to kind of agree there, and it sort of goes hand in hand with what we were saying before. So, it's good to see, again, many people agreeing. I kind of anticipate that people would, because I know my audience, and I know that a lot of you guys kind of agree on these kind of points. But I think within a wider scale, I think it's just good to have that awareness. Sometimes you can't change the situation. I don't think, we're going to see any change or difference to pre-ordering and maybe even hype, but I think that, as consumers, as gamers, as players, you can make a personal choice to engage with that content in a different way. And maybe if people lead by example, others will follow. That's definitely true in a lot of things. So, maybe if everybody, it's that classic example that I always say, right? If one person decides they're going to do something, then, you may feel like, well, hey, I can't make any difference. But if everybody decided that, yeah, I'm going to be that one person that makes a difference, suddenly you've got a little bit more of a chance of change happening there. So perhaps, one by one, we can slowly start to see a change, and as soon as there's a reasonable majority, it doesn't even have to be everybody. Once you see a sizable percentage of people taking a stand, then other people will start to see that sizable majority, and before you know it, you really do see a change. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that long term we can't see a change to pre-ordering and the way in which hype is engaged through the sort of upcoming release of a title. So that's been Below the Line today, guys. Let me know what you think about this series and the idea that I've had here. I think it's quite nice to kind of give back a little, and you know, I always read everybody's comments anyway, so this is a good way of me going through and selecting stuff and saying like, yeah, you know, I have noticed you, because sometimes I know what it's like. You know, you make comments on a lot of different videos. I comment on other people's videos on YouTube, and it's nice to kind of know that the producer or the content creator has gone through and is actually looking at what you're doing. And as a YouTube producer who I've been doing it for several years now, and a lot of you guys have followed me for a long time, you know, I want you to know that you know, the people that support me are really, really important, and it's what drives me forward, and it's what gives me morale boosts to keep on going. Every time people make a comment or give a really good, well thought out comment, it makes me feel like, yeah, you know, this was worth it, because people have engaged and they've thought about what I've said, and they've thought about the topic or the issue, and they've got involved there, and that's really important to me. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like and a comment. As I say, next week I'll be going through all my videos that I make this week, and the top 3 comments of the week that I think are really good I'll post next week. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.